Welcome back to the Vintage Ballers podcast. I'm your host, Brad Coreno, and on today's episode, we have Michael Reghi joining the show. Michael is a longtime sportscaster who was the voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Baltimore Orioles. He's also covered a plethora of sports, including the NBA, MLB, NFL, and both college football and basketball. So without further ado, please welcome Michael Reghi. Let's start it off, Michael. Again, welcome to the show. It's great having you on. You're one of the voices of my youth, and I was lucky enough to have Jack Corrigan on the program from the Indians back in the day. And, you know, so having these voices I grew up with and my generation grew up with is quite a treat for me. And, you know, with you, I wanted to start back off. Did you grow up in Detroit, Michael?
I did. Born and raised in Detroit, in the city. My father was a Detroit vice cop. So, you know, we lived in the city, literally, Brad, about 5 minutes east of downtown Detroit. So I very, very much enjoyed growing up that way. And obviously with every different race, ethnicity, nationality, you name it. And so, like I said, I wouldn't trade that for anything, because I think it gives you a real good base about how life is going to be when you do, reach adulthood. So yeah, extremely proud of that, and happy to have had that opportunity as a kid.
It's funny because I go to Detroit all the time for work. I'm always up there. Oh yeah. I haven't gone there in a while because of COVID, but I'll be up there in a couple of weeks, and I'm there all the time. So I'm very familiar with the Detroit area, the suburbs, and everything else. So, you know,
it's a good city.
It is.
You know, it's like any large urban area, Brad. I mean, you know, there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of growth and good that still can be done. But you know, at its heart and at its core, it's a great American city.
No question about it. I didn't realize how packed it was of how many people are up there. I mean, the traffic is crazy in Greater Detroit. I never really realized that till I started going there.
Well, and when I was a kid, it was the fifth largest city in the country. You know, with about 2.7 million people. Now that's dramatically dropped, as it has in virtually every major city, with the exception of New York and LA. But yeah, it was New York, LA, Chicago, Philly, and Detroit all the time when I was a kid. So, and you know, having 4 professional major sports teams in baseball, football, basketball, and hockey, that was huge for all of us kids as we grew up. You know, obviously heavily involved in the Detroit sports scene.
Now, I take it you're obviously a Detroit sports fan back then. So,
oh, absolutely.
Okay.
You're a kid, no question about it. Tigers, Lions, Pistons, Red Wings, man.
Give me some of your favorite players.
And everybody made you're either Michigan or Michigan State. And then, of course, you've got you've got the 3 MAC schools in Michigan as well, and in Central, Western, and Eastern Michigan. So, I mean, yes, there was no shortage of opportunities to root for, 4 teams on the professional level. And as I just went through, you know, all the Division I colleges and universities that were in the state of Michigan.
It is definitely a huge sports area, really, just like Ohio.
It is.
And
no,
I
just like Cleveland, you know, it's again, passion and, great caring and great concern. And when the teams aren't doing well, everybody's that armchair general manager and wants to make them better. But again, I loved growing up, and as I'm sure you did here in Cleveland. I mean, you guys, had 3 with the Browns, the Indians, and the Cavaliers. And so, the passion, it flows. And of course, after I came here in 1983, at Channel 5. So
that's when I was born.
Yeah, that's the year you were born.
Yep.
Okay. So I've been here ever since, with ESPN. And of course, for 8 years, I did the Baltimore Orioles, but I have lived in Cleveland since 1983. So I certainly have, it's been something where it gives me a great feel of just how passionate Cleveland fans are. But again, for me, that's nothing new because that's how I grew up. So, it certainly was something that came very easily and understood for me, and is starting to work here professionally to be able to have the kind of interaction I did with Cleveland fans, with the passion, and knowing where that comes from and why that is and why it's always going to continue. And I think that's a great thing about when you grow up and you love sports in a major city. You can't beat it.
I completely agree. And I lived in LA for a brief stint, and out there, I mean, sports is different out there. Obviously, you have a lot of diehard Laker fans and Dodger fans, but it wasn't. I didn't feel necessarily the same passion because it's so transient there. So many people come in and out, and there's so many fans who really aren't from LA, but they're kind of LA fans.
I got it.
We're
Yep.
here in the Midwest and even the East Coast. It seems a little more, not, I wouldn't say diehard, but there's a lot of fans who kind of like, I met Browns fans out there, Michael. This is when they were terrible, 10 years ago. And they were just as diehard as any other fan base, and it's just, so many Browns and Indians and Cavs fans I meet around the country, and they stick to those teams. I mean, they don't
You're
falter.
Right. Well, and to me, I always like to, when we discuss this kind of subject, you go to, as you said, the East Coast, and of course in the Midwest, coming into Cleveland and then Detroit and Chicago and Milwaukee and Minneapolis. But that I like to call it that I-95 corridor, Brad, that starts, up north in Boston, and then through New York City, and then through Philadelphia, and then Baltimore, and through Washington, D.C. I mean, in that corridor, you talk about rabid East Coast sports fans.
Oh, yeah.
And passion, man, it's there. And I really got to see a lot of that during my 8 years that I called the Baltimore Orioles games because seeing the New York Yankees, 18, 20 times a year, and the Boston Red Sox 18, 20 times a year. And then the same thing, of course, when you go to the NBA with the Knicks, the Sixers, and Philly, and the Boston Celtics, and the Washington Wizards. I mean, every night you see it. And no, I agree. It's a little bit different on the East Coast now. I mean, and I tell athletes all the time, we talk about it. You listen, if they get down on you, you're going to know about it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're going to know about it, and you're going to have to deal with it, because you just better learn to understand. I mean, that's the passion that exists. And, they're looking for 150% of your effort and what they want from you night in and night out. And you got to be ready to bring that.
No question about it. And I had a couple Knicks fans came out here who are, diehard Knicks fans, and they're finally excited. They're turning it around. And I told them with the Browns in Cleveland, people outside of Cleveland don't understand how much the Browns mean to the city of Cleveland. And now that they're finally turning it around, everyone's talking Browns. And it's not that we don't love our Cavs and Indians, but the Browns are just it's a football city. It's a football town.
No question.
And, from the high school level to the college level to the pro level here, it's all football. So
that's what I love about it too. I mean, I'll be honest with you, that was the most compelling thing for me, because when I actually, came to Ohio and started calling college games. I was in the northwest side of the state, around, Defiance and Napoleon, and down into Lima, that area. And that's when, I started in the industry out of college and was calling games on the radio, Division III games, and for, football, basketball, baseball. And I mean, I pretty much, I've been in the state since 1978, and again, came here in 1983. And it's, I mean, it's, as I said, to me, it's not different at all than how I grew up and spent my childhood, but I certainly understand, and I agree with you 100%. The football passion here is, I think, far and away number one. And I think it always will be. And that's why, I think, a fan base that's willing to gone through over 2 decades now for the Browns to get themselves right again. I think that tells you everything you need to know.
You're exactly right. And in football, really, it's, in my opinion, it's the easiest sport to turn it around as far as, it shouldn't take a 5 or 10 years like the NBA, where you need a LeBron, you need someone to turn it around like that. Where football, a couple of years, you could be a good team again.
No question.
We couldn't do it in 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's just,
And no, you're right about that. Baseball, I would say, would fall in the middle of that. I mean,
agree.
You got to get pitching. If you're lucky enough to get young pitching, that gives you a shot. And then you add from there. But the NFL, yeah, you're right. We've seen it with the Browns. I mean, they've gone from 0-16 now to a team that's already here a few months before the season starts, Brad, being called one of the best teams in the NFL, one of the better teams in the AFC, and a Super Bowl contender.
Yep.
That's a couple of years from 0-16. I don't think you do that much in any other sport, as you said, unless you get LeBron James or, the late Kobe Bryant or a player of that magnitude. Then you got a shot. But anything short of that, now football is really the only one that you could do it that quickly in.
Completely agree. And I think baseball, you're right. Baseball's a weird sport. You watch Bryce Harper leave the Nationals and they won the World Series the next year. So you just don't, baseball's so weird and fickle. You never know what's going to really happen. It's kind of getting hot at the right time. And like you said, pitching. But, that's why the Tribe, I can't count the Tribe out. Their lineup, is obviously kind of all over the place, but their pitching is phenomenal. And if they can get any kind of hitting over the course of the year, I think that, they have a chance to at least make the playoffs.
Well, yeah, they've done a great job in terms of, Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff with him before he left in putting together. And that's how they looked at it. We have got to find the best young pitching we can, look to draft it, but then you got to develop it, as we know. And there's a lot of organizations that have been able to draft, but that come up short in the development of young talent. And that won't work either. I mean, you could draft outstanding players, but then you've got to be able to develop them. And that's the biggest thing that, I always give a lot of credit for to the Indians, their front office. I know the fans are down on the Dolans in terms of, management, ownership, in terms of believing that, they've shown that they're not willing to pay for talent. But, the thing is, when you look at it, I mean, look at that run they had, and, you could turn that into a positive too. All right. Was their payroll the highest in Major League Baseball? No. But again, they're in the playoffs for how many years in a row?
Yep.
5? The 5 years in a row they made the playoffs and, went to the World Series and were, a half inning away from winning a World's Championship here. So, to me, again, baseball is, eventually you got to pay people. But, I don't begrudge them, Brad, for the Francisco Lindor situation.
Either do I. I
really don't. Somebody's going to offer a player, I don't care, Lindor or anybody, a $340 million. Well, if you're not in one of the major markets, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to withstand that. You just can't. Now, so they decided to trade him. Now what you're going to see, but that's going to take 2 or 3 years. Did they get the best possible return on that investment? Well, we're going to find out. You got to see how these guys that they got for them in trade, how their major league careers pan out. Young players, and we'll see. But you said it a few minutes ago, when you can pitch, you always give yourself a shot. And that they have. I'm frustrated with some of the things they've done offensively and position players. But, there again, I understand how they're going about it. We're going to, as we've said, we're going to stay in with superior starting pitching. And that'll give us a shot. Now, when they start to play games against, teams of their like or in a playoff situation, will they hit enough to sustain? Don't know. Yeah. I'm going to say off the top, no. Mm-hmm. I don't think this lineup as it currently exists is going to hit enough to be able to. I thought they'd be about a 500 team. That's where they're at right now, a little bit over 500. About what are they? About 35 games in now?
Yeah, yep. I think about 3 games over.
Again, baseball, man, you got to do it over 160. Yep. And then you got to be able to do it against the teams that are like you in terms of, playoff-worthy teams to be able to advance and win a championship. So we'll see. Again, maybe they're going to go out and look for a bat or two. Who knows? Maybe they will and decide, you know what, if we're going to do this earnestly and sincerely, then we got to have another bat or two in the offense, which I definitely believe they do. And I think most Indian fans probably feel the same way too, that they're going to have to find a way to get some more pop in that offense if they're going to be playing in October.
No question about it. And I agree with you on Lindor. A lot of my friends were kind of upset when they traded him. And I said, look, in all sports, Michael, there's only a few players to me when you're talking about these mega contracts. Mm-hmm. Really, one player you look at who you can say this guy can turn my franchise around. That's right. Patrick Mahomes and LeBron. To me, I look at those two guys. You could put them on any team, and they'll help turn the franchise around. They're that good.
Correct.
Even Mahomes, they're just a super talented. But if even like Mike Trout, other guys, I mean, Mike Trout's been with the Angels for how many years now? They haven't even made the World Series, even close to it. They haven't made the playoffs most of the time.
No.
So, no disrespect to Lindor, all these guys are phenomenal players, Hall of Famers.
That's right.
But I look at Mahomes and LeBron are two of the few guys I can think of in all of sports are really worth the mega contracts as far as what they bring you every year to the playoffs. You're getting to the playoffs almost every year. But beyond that,
case for that, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you there.
I mean, beyond, I don't know many guys that really, it's not that they're not worth the money. They're great players, but with the Indians, and we got to, like they said, they're looking to make the playoffs, consistently. And Lindor's phenomenal. He helps you get there, but is he really a LeBron Mahomes type of player? We're going to, I don't think he is.
And listen, I don't want anyone to think when you're listening to Brad's, I'm not, Francisco Lindor is an amazing talent. Okay. But if you look at his last couple of seasons, number one, well, I'll take it a step further. People that know me, I was very, very upset. To me, Francisco Lindor isn't the best hitter in the Cleveland Indians.
No, I agree.
Jose Ramirez and Michael Brantley were the best hitters in the Cleveland Indians.
Completely agree.
And why? And I'm talking about pure hitters now. I know, Lindor can hit 30, 35 home runs. Brantley usually hits 18 to 20. But, Brantley hits 25, 30, 35 points higher than Lindor every year and you're going to let that. Now, I was upset there you're going to let him walk and not pay him $15 million a year. And at the time, he was in his prime at 32 years old. And, oh, by the way, all he's done in Houston in his 2 years is hit 320 and 310, just like he always does. Has Lindor been anywhere near that?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Not even close.
Again, to me, that's how I look at things. So I thought letting Brantley go was a big, big mistake. And then you saw, the Indians outfield offensively has been a disaster since they decided to let him walk. Not just average, not just, we got to get better. No, it's been a disaster. So bad decision on their part, to me.
Yep, completely agree.
If you haven't, just go look at what the man does every year. He hits 300 to 320 in the full season. He hits 18 to 22 home runs and drives in 85 to 90 runs in the middle of your order. And at the time they let him go, he was 31 years old. To me, see, that was a bad move, real bad move. And they said, well, he got hurt and missed it. Well, no, he can't. The last year he played for the Indians, 2018, had a far superior year to Francisco Lindor. Go look at it. He did. And then you got Jose Ramirez. And are they going to be able to keep him? Well, we'll see. But so again, that's not all to disparage Francisco Lindor, but I just find it, so you pretty much know that you're not going to have a shot with Lindor to keep him. Now you're going to let a guy like Brantley walk in his prime because you don't want to pay him $15 million a year. I don't get that. I don't understand.
No, I agree. I completely agree. And I'm convinced, Michael, that if we had Brantley and Carrasco healthy for the 2016 World Series, that we win that because you're not pitching Kluber. You're not over pitching Kluber. You're not.
Probably not.
So, I'm not, who knows? We'll never know. But I think you have Carrasco for at least one, if not two of those starts. And then you have Brantley in that lineup. There's definitely a better chance we win that. So, we'll never know. But it always frustrates me.
About it. You're absolutely right. And again, listen, I certainly hope that because I love the Indians fan base, and I know you Indians fans are you care extremely, and you'll go down to the ballpark, and people always say, well, why doesn't it show up attendance wise? Last year, of course, we got everything shut down, the aberration to that, but I always feel that that ballpark is going to be full when the Indians continue to win and continue to do what they've done. Again, you've got a team that's at least, I'm not going to say a championship caliber team every year, but certainly in this format, in this day and age of baseball, it's a playoff team every year. So, and then, you go and you take your shot. So, we'll see. I think they maybe, they're going to have to pitching's going to have to carry them, as we said a few minutes ago, and maybe they'll say we got to add a bat if we're going to really contend, win the division, maybe win a round in the playoffs. We're going to need some offense. So I think that's probably the feel that most fans have at this particular time about where the ball club is.
Agree. And I think you made a great point about the organization in general. They get a lot of flack from the top. I
They
don't think
do.
it's all deserved. And if you look at the last 25 years, even before the Dolans, they're the most stable franchise in Cleveland since the mid 90s. I mean,
No
the
doubt.
Browns were a disaster for 2 decades, and the Cavs without LeBron have pretty much been a disaster. So you got to think that the Indians, for all the flack they get, they've really been the most stable. They've been the 3 World Series since then. Should have won a couple of them. I mean, it is what it is. It's just, in my opinion, it's just bad luck. You just, 2 of them you had in the bag.
Yep.
So I just look at that and I think, what else could they possibly have done? Yes, win a championship, but they got there 3 times.
That's right.
And with the money they do spend, which is not a ton, they've done pretty well over that period. So, and I think they've signed certain people, the Hafners of the world, and didn't work out, Jake Westbrook, but
That's right.
yeah, we can get into all that. It's bad luck and it is what it is, but I don't give them as much flack as a typical Cleveland fan will, because I see it from the top to the bottom, and it's a stable organization. Antonetti's fantastic and Tito's fantastic, and they run a very steady ship, in my opinion.
Yeah, they do. And it's always done with, I feel a great baseball perspective in mind. Everything they do is done to the continuance of what we're talking about, establishing themselves as a team that you certainly have to consider as a playoff team each and every year. Once you get to, October, Brad, it's like anything else, and I know. We mentioned it, up 3-1 in the Cubs and literally 3 outs away. And then, just bitterly and so frustrating, they lose 3 in a row to not win the series. It's, those things, but that has nothing to do with how ownership and management look to put their baseball team together, and how they develop players and what they look as important to them. So, certainly frustrating that you don't, close that out. You gotta be, you say, well, God, up 3-1, gotta be able to close it out. Sure you do. Of course you do. Didn't happen. So, but you don't change everything and pull everything apart because of that. You look to build on it. I think they'll continue to, again, to me, they're a playoff contender each and every year. As we said, to me, it's probably going to be a little more difficult this year because of right now the way the offense is. But it's mid-May, so we'll see what July and August bring with regard to that.
Agree. And they really, when's the last time we had a really bad Indians team? Probably a decade ago. Really, since then, it's been, like you said, playoffs. And when we miss, we're still pretty good. So, yeah, they again, I have really nothing bad to say as far as just the last 20, 25 years of that franchise. I think they've been very steady, and see what they do in the next couple of years, of course. But for now, how could you complain about 3 World Series appearances? It's not their fault they lost. They did the best they could. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to complain about that. And again, when you look at the structure of baseball today, and look, it's not just as easy as writing the big. I know Indians fans have been, what do you think's been going on the first 6 weeks of the season? Francisco Lindor and the Mets are catching all kinds of hell.
Yes, they are.
I think he might have just got over 200 for this weekend.
He was 0 for 24 at one point.
Yeah. So, when you have those kind of things going on, it's not just about writing a paycheck. You got to have, as I said, you got to have great perspective about how you're putting the thing together.
Yep.
So, we'll see how that goes for Frankie in New York. A lot of stories still to be written on that, Brad.
There is. Agree. And I want to take it back real quick. You're growing up in Detroit days. My dad actually grew up next door to Rocky Colavito in Cleveland.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah. So it was he always told me the stories, and I never knew how big Rocky was till I got older. Cause obviously I wasn't born back then, but he told me, so he was a next door neighbor. I think that they had a rented house that he would rent off a pitcher. I can't remember the name of the pitcher. My dad would know. They pitched for the Angels, I think. But anyway, so Rocky was there for a while and got to know my grandparents and then my dad as a little boy. So when they got traded, it was my dad's, like, the whole city went crazy because back then he was the LeBron of Cleveland. Him and Jim Brown were the LeBrons of Cleveland.
Absolutely.
So, and again, I
and
never.
Rocky was a part of my youth too, Brad, because let's see, Rocky Cal was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. Those when Rocky was a Detroit Tiger.
Yep, that's my dad's
A
age,
lot of
right
people
around then.
don't know about that. So, I mean, and again, here's the thing about the difference in baseball now. So how about this? There was a one in I think it was 1961. So I'm 7 years old in 1961. I still remember this. The Tigers went 102-60 and did not get in the playoffs.
What?
Because the only team, the New York Yankees, beat them out by 3 games and went to the World Series. There was no playoff structures then. You either win, there was all one American League. You either win that, you go to the World Series to play. But how about that? And Rocky was a big part of that. Hit 45 home runs. Him and Al Kaline and Norm Cash and all those great Tigers from back in the early 60s. And yeah, I mean,
102.
Get a chance to go to postseason play. Win 102 games out of a year, lose by 3 games the pennant to the Yankees, and watch the Yankees go to the playoffs.
Wow.
So again, no playoffs. Then you win. There was an American League, National League. When the American League, go to the World Series. When the National League, go to the World Series. So I mean, back then it was even more. There was even more pressure on. There wasn't all these layers of playoffs. You had to come through 162 games and be the number 1 team in the league to get to the championship.
Oh, that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, but Rocky, we all loved him as a kid in Detroit. He Rocco Domenico Calavito. All of us kids just loved him, and he'd point his bat at the pitcher hole as he was starting. And it was just great. Loved having him, and then of course, knowing that. How much he meant to the Indians fans too. So I almost feel like I've had 2 doses of Rocky during my lifetime. It was great.
Oh yeah, people still mention the curse of Rocky Calavito.
Yeah,
it's funny. That was always a thing back then. Now I want to go back to your college days. You went to Arizona State, correct?
Yeah, correct.
What was your time like there?
I loved it, enjoyed it. Certainly was. That was during the early 70s, early in the mid 70s. And it was great. Decided to, I majored in television and radio, and because I knew it was something I wanted to make as my career. And I'm blessed, Brad. It worked out fine, graduated. And then, oh my God, literally about, was less than 6 months later, I was fortunate to get my first job around Lansing, Michigan. Wasn't making much money. It didn't make much money at all. Like I said, calling high school games and Division III college football and basketball games. But, you're 22 years old, man, I loved it. And, it was the best thing going. So, it was exactly what I wanted to do. And that's why I have, again, and I know it's difficult for young people today because I have the great fortune. I speak to a lot of, whether it's broadcasting curriculum majors in a lot of the universities here in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan. I've done that a lot. I really enjoy doing it. And again, I use that word, but you got to be passionate about what you're doing. You got to believe in yourself. And I'm not going to tell you it's going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. And the one thing I've had to kind of change my role on, though, is Brad. Like, for instance, sure, when I got out of college, I would have loved to start, in Detroit, or in Cleveland, or Chicago, Philly. Man, that was impossible back then. Now, I will say, and listen, I am absolutely thrilled. There are young men and women that are getting the opportunities now to maybe forego having to. I mean, I remember the first time I talked to a station manager, and again, I just happened to meet him while I was calling a small college football game. And I introduced myself and knew he was from, was a station manager in Chicago. And he said, how long you been in the business? I said, well, a year and a half, sir. He said, tell you what, he said, you come back in about 10 years. And he said, you keep doing good things, about 10 years, maybe I give you a shot in Chicago.
Wow.
That always stuck with me. But
wow.
Honestly, that's what it's like. You had to pay your dues, man. you had to pay your dues. You had to put in your time and show that it just wasn't a thing. The business was. Now remember though, there was not ESPN at that time. ESPN was just a few years away from coming. There weren't all the cable outlets, and there weren't all of the various now outlets that have contracts for college sports. There was the local ABC, NBC, and CBS affiliate in each city, major city, and that's it. So the jobs were kind of few and far between. And so, that's why I said, well, I want to do the play-by-play thing. So that's why I started. I'm glad I started small, and like I said, calling games in Bluffton, Ohio, and calling Bluffton and calling Earlham College and Defiance College. And I mean, listen, that's where you grow. That's where you grow. And that's where again, no, you're not making a lot of money, but that's okay. That's okay too, because I think for me, it really helped make me fully understand everything I had to put into it. Yes. And everything I had to achieve and everything I had to do to set myself up in a position to be able to looked at to call Division I college football, basketball, to be able to call the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NFL. So I don't regret it for a minute. Not at all, ever. I mean, I'm glad I started that way and had to work my way up the ranks, so to speak. Yeah.
And it's interesting, Michael, because when I started really getting into sports, when I really knew what was going on around 10 years old, that's when you became the voice of the Cavs in '93.
Yes.
So, I've always known you as this major announcer. I never knew, obviously I never knew what you did before that necessarily. I knew you worked in Cleveland for a while, but it's interesting hearing what happened back in the '70s and kind of working your way up, because I only know you as the Michael Reghi. I never knew you as, the unknown guy before then. So,
that was my first, but I started I really feel, Brad, that in 1983, in November of '83, I came here to Cleveland and at WEWS, TV5. And I mean, I was there 3 years, as a weekend sports anchor. Started with just two Cleveland absolute legends, phenomenons, Gib Shanley, and then the late Nev Chandler. And being able, as I was still in my 20s, so being able as a young sportscaster to have that kind of opportunity and to be able to work with those two in particular, whom I was around and saw every day and worked with, talked to, associated with every day, that too, those kind of things, I, listened a lot, kept my mouth shut, learned a lot, and saw how they went about their daily grind. And those things too, to me, I mean, because here in Cleveland, to me, and it's amazing, people always used to ask me, well, who do you think was better, Gib or Nev? It's like, I've been with both of them. And I mean, and I was proud of the fact that, okay, Gib was the voice of the Browns. And then he decided, and that comes with that comes with tremendous cachet attached.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and I'm bigger than that now.
No.
And then Gib decides to, make that move and go to Los Angeles. That unfortunately for him, never really went the way he wanted it to. But then Nev takes over for him. And of course, Nev was with Herb Score at the time, calling the Indians. Mm-hmm. But Nev had been Gib's weekend sportscaster at Channel 5.
Ah, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to say, goodness, I'm going to say for 6 or 7 years. And Nev was a weekend guy. Gib was, the number one guy from Monday through Friday, and Nev did weekends. And then during that period of time, when I came to Channel 5, as I said, as Gib's weekend guy, Nev was doing the Indians on radio, on WTAM with Herb Score. And then during the winter, he called the Cavaliers television package on WUAB. At that time, again, there was no Fox Sports Ohio, right? That wasn't a thing yet. So there was about 25 or 30 Cavaliers games on. And this is, of course, during the World Be Free era, you know, just before the drafting of Doherty and Nance and Price, and the Cavs starting to take off more in '86 and beyond that. So yeah, I mean and then Nev gave that up to replace Gibb as the #1 guy at Channel 5. And of course I stayed, doing weekends then for Nev. But that's when I during that period of time, Brad, for me is when I got my first opportunity to, like I said, I'd called all kinds of high school, small college games on the radio, but in 1985, because ESPN came aboard came on in 1980. In 1985 was when I got my first opportunity to call college football and college basketball. A lot of them, mostly MAC games at the time. So, after that, I'd been at 3 years at Channel 5, and it's like, boy, obviously I'm doing weekends at Channel 5. Well, I can't do the weekends and call these games too. So that's when I decided, you know what, I'm gonna take a shot and see what I can do as a play-by-play caller. And so I did, and then, so while I left Channel 5, I never left Cleveland. I stayed living here, and so that's kind of how everything turned out to get me through then getting the Cavs job, as you said, in 93 and 93-94 season. And then ultimately 3 years later, I got the Baltimore Orioles too. So, it's, listen, I'm honored and humbled. It's been a great ride. And, it's one that you just, I think you hope, I know I do, I put in perspective. And to me, you gotta pay your dues, and you gotta be willing to work your way up. And even that doesn't guarantee it's going to happen. Nope. But I know so many guys, Brad, that and women too, that have called sports and are still they're my age, they're over 60 years old and still calling high school games and love it. And hey, man, I certainly understand it, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like I said, there's not 100% guarantee you're ever going to get to the major leagues, right? It's just like if you're playing any sport, there's no guarantee. Mm-mm. So, but yeah, I've been blessed, and it's been a thrilling ride and a great ride for me.
And when you look back at those days with Gibb and Nev, what's your favorite memory with those two?
Well, I think for Gibb, it was just how, he was so dry. I mean, he had a very great wit and a great sense of humor, but it was understated and real dry. I mean, Gibb wasn't a man with, with a lot of words, so I found out that early too. It was kind of, and again, I say this with all due respect. I mean this. It's not anything. This is not, it's like, when Gibb speaks to me, that's when I know he'll want me to talk. And he'll want my opinion on something, or he'll want a response to something. Otherwise, Gibb was like, hey, young fella, don't bother me, okay? So, but I love that about him. I really did. And I mean that. It was like, listen, this is how this is how I do things. This is the way it is. This is how I want you to do things. Oh, and we don't need to talk about it too much. We got that understanding, right? Yes, sir, Mr. Shanley. We got that understanding. So, no, I thought the world of the guy, and like I said, Gibb wasn't the type. So at that time, Gibb was, and again, now this is 1980, late 83, Gibb's in his mid 50s and I'm 29, so I mean, socially, were our two worlds, no, but again, I mean, I respected the man greatly, and I thought, man, he's calm, he's revered around here, but he doesn't, he doesn't take any BS either. Gibb is a tough-minded man, right? Now, Nev, Neville was, a little bit more gregarious, a little bit more. Nev did the voices and imitated a lot of people. And Nev was, always ready to, he talked for sports with you for hours, if you wanted to. And two different guys. I mean, two distinctly different personalities and how they approach things. But I was honored to be able to, like I said, spend 3 years combined with both of them, and to get a great understanding of what they are and what they meant to Cleveland sports fans. And that I did because, two iconic Cleveland sportsmen.
Oh yeah.
Both of them. And there are others,
Casey Coleman.
Yeah, we just lost Joe Tate, who
Joe Tate.
I had I did have a, quite off the court and off the relationship with for, 14 years. Yeah, 14 years with Joe. Well, I called the Cavaliers and just loved him. And again, guy that a lot of people would say, boy, he's not very social. He's not very nice. Joe didn't care about that.
No, it didn't seem like he did. No.
Joe didn't, Brad.
But that's what I loved about him. Yeah.
And that's what I loved about him too. It's like, I'm calling the game and I'm going to call the game. Yeah, I want the Cavaliers to do well, but if they don't, not on me, not the end of the world. I'm going to call the game and tell it exactly how I see it and how it should be called. And I love Joe for that. I mean, again, it was, there was nothing you can do that was going to get Joe Tate to, get off what he thought was the only way, not what he thought. It was the only way for him to call a game. And he did that every night, year after year after year. And I always said, I first started listening to Joe, when the because of WTAM, and its signal. Brad, I was still in high school in Detroit. Wow. I first started to listen to Joe and said, damn, this guy's good. Again, this is going back to the early 70s when the Cavaliers first, came into the NBA and got the franchise and played the old Cleveland Arena. It's like, my God, this guy's good. Let you know where the ball is every moment that it's on the floor, where it's passed to, whom it's passed to, on what spot on the floor, never misses a pass of the ball, always gives you the time, the score, again, the 10 on the floor. I thought, and again, this is way before I got here and met him. I thought this guy, and you obviously, New York, you heard about Marv Albert. Mm-hmm. LA, you heard about Chick Hearn. Boston, there was the irascible Johnny Most back in the day. To me, Joe Tate was as good as all of them.
Completely agree.
Not better. And that's not, those guys are outstanding. They're outstanding. But Joe, you had put him with the Knicks in New York in the 70s or 80s, in LA with the Lakers, 70s or 80s, Boston with the Celtics in the 70s. He would have been, I'm going to tell you, he'd be called, this is the greatest radio play-by-play guy ever in the NBA.
Completely agree.
I guarantee you, if he was in one of those larger markets that really, that was a thing, whom was calling the game. Oh, we got the best. Well, that would have been Joe. If he had been in one of those situations. Again, that's nothing against Marv Albert, Johnny Most, Chick Hearn, the legendary guys too, fabulous NBA guys. But man, Joe Tate, to me, again, now I'm a little bit biased because of my time with him. But certainly, I'll just say this: up in the pantheon of the greatest NBA radio play-by-play guys of all time.
No question.
He's in the top 5.
No question. When I was a kid, I remember listening to him, and he could paint a picture like nobody else could. Yep. And I didn't even understand what the forecourt was or the timeline. I didn't get that as a 7-year-old kid, but I remember him going, over the timeline into the forecourt, Price, to Elo. Yep. He just painted a picture. And I don't know, anybody in Cleveland doesn't like the guy, All my generation grew up listening to him. He's an icon to us, and I mean, so are you. You guys, I mean, guys like Tom Hamilton. Joe was a little bit older than all you guys, but he was kind of the last of that generation that was still going for a while, and he went for years, obviously. And my dad remembers when him and I think Bruce Drennan called the Indians games back in the day. I mean, there's so many.
That was 83, 84.
Exactly. Yep. That was right when I was born. Yep.
Yep. Absolutely. And again, that's when I came. I first started at Channel 5 in it was early November, so it was right before Thanksgiving in 1984. And I mean, that's when I first really started to, know on a daily basis, Gib and Joe, especially those two, with, what they meant to everyone here and why they were, so indelibly, connected with the fans. And because that's the thing I always, I wanted to start it on the radio side, like I said, but, as just the way would have it, TV came into into the 80s. And now, like I said, ESPN comes in, and now you're getting more cable networks that started it. So the opportunities came that way. But yeah, I began, and you said painting the picture. That's the thing about, television. That's the biggest thing I had to learn, Brad. Hey, man, not only do you don't have to, you better not start saying every time the ball is passed, or that, like you said, Joe Price to the line, to the lane, to the hoop. Well, all I would say in that on television is, you say Price, lay it in with the right hand. That's it, because everybody's seeing it. And that I had to learn, Brad, to pull it back when I started in television, because even though my was in radio. And I started, I had called games on the radio, basketball, football, baseball. Again, nowhere near the major leagues now. High school and mostly Division II and Division III. But I'd call that for 8 years before I, started doing TV games. So I had to learn to pull it back some, and that's not necessarily my personality and how I go about calling a game. So I had to figure it out quickly.
Well, okay, I have a couple more questions about the Cavs days, because that's my, my youth right there is all those. So, and I actually had Cedric Henderson on this program a couple weeks ago.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, great guy, and talked to him for a while, so he'll definitely want to see this. And we talked for a while about Z and Derek Anderson and Kemp and that whole team. So, but you were talking earlier about paying your dues and how hard it is to get to an elite level in anything you do. My brother Michael, he's the all-time leading scorer for North Olmsted basketball. Played at the University of Rio Grande in Southern Ohio.
Sure.
So Mid-Ohio, he was the only two-time MVP of the Mid-Ohio Conference. And to show you how tough it is just to even think about making the NBA, I mean, two-time MVP of his conference, great player, phenomenal player, didn't even get close to making the NBA just because the scouts told he was just too small. He was a center. He was only 6'5". Too slow to play the guard, too small to be a center. They said he had great talent. They said if he was 4 or 5 inches taller, he'd be a first-round pick, but he's not. That tells you how tough it is to really, to be at an elite level in anything, you have to be out of this world. And, my brother's a very modest guy. He would hate me even bring this up to you, but he really will. He'll hear this and say, why'd you bring that up? But I'm just telling the listeners, that he was a phenomenal player, Michael. And again, just to see how the guys have had in the show who are in the NBA, how tough it is just to get to that level. I mean, Cedric Henderson played right after Penny Hardaway at Memphis, and he was saying how great Penny was and, just how tough it was following that act, having one of the all-time greats go through there. So now going to your Cavs days, you working with a Joe Tate, for example, he's radio, you're TV.
Yes.
What did he teach you? Like, what was a couple lessons that he taught you from all the things that he had done those previous 30 years?
Again, I think the biggest thing, I think I mentioned it, I remember one night and, the Cavs were getting on the plane and the Cavs had blown, I think it was, my goodness, had to be an 18 to 20 point lead. I was against Detroit. And this was still 93. This was it was the end of Doherty was out for the whole year. Price had been injured and was starting that transition from Price, Doherty, and Nance, and what then would become the Mike Fratello teams of Terrell Brandon,
Phils.
The late Bobby Phils, Chris Mills, Michael Cage. They kept Hot Rod for a couple years, but, it was an aging Hot Rod. So Bobby Sura,
Tyrone
Dane
Hill.
Harley was brought in.
Yep.
So it was that group of Cavaliers. And, I thought Mike Fratello would have them, finish 47-35 and get a playoff spot and then get beat by the Knicks in the first round.
Yep.
And that happened twice. But,
They got swept. Yeah.
Yep. The 5 year, 5 years in a row in the playoffs. But the biggest thing for me is that, Joe, sometimes he'd see me and I'd be, I don't know, I won't say upset, but I'd say about the game. And, if this particular play would have been run effectively, Joe, or if they could have got a stop here, and Joe and his, I'm going to do my best Joe Tate imitation, because he's like, he'd look at me and shake his head and go, Michael, you don't win a game, you don't lose a game, and you sure as hell shouldn't let it affect you either way it comes out. Just get ready for the next one.
I love it. I love it.
And so I hear you, Joe. I got you. And but Joe, I'll tell you the truth, and because in fact, I told your grandfather this story and his dear friend Phil Bova these stories as well. Joe loved the horses and the racetrack, and he loved also to go and play the slots in casinos. He didn't like to tell you about the slots. He'd sit there. So he'd set up, we'd be going, say a trip to Philadelphia. And Cavaliers going to play Philadelphia, and then it was the New Jersey Nets. Remember, they played in the Meadowlands there. And he's like, Michael, we got a day off in between. He said, I'm going to get a car, and we're going to go to Atlantic City. And he said, you and I will have we'll relax and forget it. He said, we ain't going to talk nothing about basketball. We're going to go to Atlantic City, and I might play a race, but I'm going to play the slots all day long, and then we'll have dinner. And I tell you, Brad, I probably did that 50 times with Joe. That was our days off all around the NBA. And I love doing it. I felt honored. Well, you know what? If he wants me to be the one to go with him and have the off day like that, hey, on the road, let's go. Let's go do that. And it was a great time. I mean, the only thing is he wouldn't, he'd like to go like 52 miles an hour in the left lane. We got 18 wheelers beeping the horn at us. Get over. But, hey, Joe, I'll drive to Atlantic City. I got it, Michael. I'm fine. I'll take it. So, but I say that with all love. I miss him dearly. And I just think about his 14 years having those kind of memories with him. And I remember as much, literally, probably more, Brad, to be honest, like I just described, on off days, he and I getting together, like I said, if there was a casino around where we were, oh boy, when we were in, in San Francisco at Sacramento, I know where we were going. We were going to Reno, Nevada, and he'd get the car and we'd be going to Reno. And I was like a given. When we were in Texas, we would go over to the riverboats in Louisiana. And that's what, again, now, this is the 1990s and on, late 90s and on in the early 2000s. So, Joe is moving along in his career, but those were the things that became very, very important to him. And I would say, and again, but, to him, it was like, hey, I'm doing a job here. And I don't think as he went along, well, I know he told me as he went along, calling the NBA 25, 30 years, he realized listen, I'm going to call the game, and I'm not going to worry about it too much one way or the other, because whatever's going to happen, happens. Want the Cavaliers to be successful, of course. But if they're not, oh, well, there's another game coming up tomorrow night. And that was his approach on things. And I think he was trying to tell me, you better stop being so low when things aren't going well, because you're going to work yourself into a place you don't want to be.
I love it. And it sounds like my dad. That's like every time certain team to lose, he gets so upset. And even to this day, he still does. But over the years, he's calmed it down. So me and my dad's favorite restaurant is a place called Whitey's out in Richfield, and his wife used to work there. And my dad knew his wife, and she was awesome. And yep. Mm-hmm. And I remember as a little kid meeting her many times. And so, yeah, Joe Tate has a very special place, I think, in all, Clevelanders' hearts. And I remember when he passed, reading a lot of the comments, there wasn't one negative comment. I mean, you read down, I don't care where you were, it was just people just beloved the man. And to me, he's truly a treasure. I mean, he was a broadcasting treasure, and someone who, again, listening to him on the radio, I mean, he changed I can't listen to other teams' broadcasters now on the radio, in other cities, because Joe is so good. It kind of ruined it for me. It is.
Oh, I agree with you. You said it beautifully, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like I said, he was, to me, he's top 5 all time in the greatest radio play-by-play guys in NBA history. And I'll tell you what, he called baseball pretty well too. He did the Indians for many, many years. And, in the last many years, to show you, like we said, he was born on a farm in Illinois. And, Brad, I don't think he did it. He probably hasn't since 2018. But, in even these last few years, he would call Mount Union football. They had a tremendous program down in Alliance. They would tape delay their games and their home games, and so they'd air on Saturday night on one of the lower powered, smaller Canton stations. Joe did that for years. How off days and things like that, but he made it a point to let me know you have to take every day as its own separate entity. And what he was telling me is, you can't get too close to the players and the coach, not that you don't have relationships, you do, but again, you can't let their winning or losing affect you / distract you in one way or the other. And it was very, very good advice. Very good advice to a young guy doing play-by-play, So, that, but, so many other things in terms of just how diligent he was in his work. Everything he did was handwritten, Brad. He did all of his score sheets and put all of his, all of his team pages together on his own, and he'd sit in a hotel for a couple of hours the night before a game and do it. So again, I miss him. I miss him greatly. After he retired, would talk to him here and there, but you could tell. I mean, his except for the desire to call Mount Union football, his, I think his, I mean, 82, 83 years old, his desires, for professional sports started to wane a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And, looking back at that era from 93 to 06, and you're with the Cavs, you actually, it was pretty incredible because you got to cover the end of the Price Doherty era.
Yep.
You talked about the late Bobby Phils, Terrell Brandon, Tyrone Hill, that era. And then, of course, the Kemp, Derek Anderson, Cedric Henderson, Brevin Knight, that era. And then, of course, Darius Miles and those guys, and then LeBron. So you really got to cover almost 5 different mini eras of Cavs basketball that, I mean, I don't know anyone else that has, in a 13-year period. So when you look back at, the 90s Cavs, for example, and like the DA teams with Kemp and those guys, what was your impression of that team? I know Cedric said I think they had 4 rookies that year if you count a Z.
They did.
And,
yeah. If you count
it was really a fun team.
Yeah. That Mike Fratello, the coach there. And I'll be honest, Mike's a dear friend to this day. And, I found that intriguing. Listen, he'd tell you it was challenging for him. I mean, he's coming, the Cavaliers, that was not, Brad, the Cavaliers franchise that he was expecting to coach. You know, I mean, he was expecting to coach the Price, Doherty, Nance, Hot Rod, Elo, at the time, John Battle, that group that the Cavaliers felt that had a good, you know, hopefully 3, 4, maybe even 5 more years together. And, you know, hey, listen, again, a lot of times, and we know Mike had great success with the Dominique Wilkins squads in Atlanta.
He did. Kevin Willis. Yep, those guys.
Kevin Willis.
Stacey Augman was there at the end.
That was that was more Lenny Wilkins.
Doc Rivers.
Antoine Carr.
Antoine Carr, yep.
Doc Rivers. Carr, Doc Rivers, Muggsy Bogues.
Yep.
That group. That's who Mike had with Atlanta. Now he's coming here, and again, as I mentioned, this group of Cavaliers, hey, they are championship contenders with that. And you know, for the first year, Brad Doherty doesn't play a game. You know, he's out for the whole year. Mark was starting to break down physically, and you know, Mark was one that just you know, Mark just, I guess, just didn't buy into Mike and how Mike wanted to play as a head coach. But you know what, Mike didn't want to play that way. And people think about, and that was more a couple of years later when they started the 95-96 season 0-9 and losing every game 138 to 121. And Mike went to him, and this was more the Terrell Brandon, Bobby Phils,
under Dan,
Chris Mills, that crew, Michael Cage, Sura as a rookie. And Mike, you know, is simple, Brad, but I mean, basketball guy like yourself, or a coach, you're a coach, you fan, if you can understand this. He said, look, we cannot win. We can't give up 135 points. We're never going to win a game. So, i.e., we cannot run up and down the floor and play 94 feet and try to beat these teams 138, 135. It ain't going to work. Not going to work. So either you guys, and you talk about it amongst yourself. Either we're going to start limiting possessions, slow the game down as much as you could slow an NBA game down. And he said, I believe we'll win. We will put ourselves in a greater opportunity to win. Well, as I said, you know, it's not what a lot of guys wanted to hear. I mean, they're NBA players, but they did, and I hear about it all the time. I mean, the late, great Jeff Sindelar. Remember the professor?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I'm friends with his son.
Reghi. Oh, yeah. How in the hell do you call a 77 to 75 NBA game?
I'm friends with his son, so he'll love to hear this. This is great.
Oh, yeah. His son's terrific. Give him my best.
I will.
But yeah.
And how was it calling those games?
I mean, well, it was way different. It was way different. I mean, at times it felt like a high school game. Possessions that it seemed like, is there still a 24-second clock in this game? I swear the Cavs have had the ball for 45 seconds and not taken any shots. You know, and again, like I said earlier, though, Brad, I mean, and Fratello got them to the playoffs. And I mean, you could say, okay, well, and I mean, I've had to deal with it a lot, Brad. A lot of Cavs fans said, so what? So I said, well, then, okay, would you rather be 10-72 or 47-35 and go to the playoffs? Well, if you're 10-72, you get a high draft. Well, as we said earlier, too, just because you got high draft picks, that doesn't mean anything.
No. Look at the current Cavs. They've gotten top 5 picks, and, you know, they're still not where they want to be. And it's just.
And it was still a little bit different then. You know, it was, and back when it started, Jordan was with the Bulls, and the Knicks were that tough Knicks team of Ewing and Oakley and Starks and that group. They were right there with the Bulls winning 60 games a year. So you probably weren't going to beat them anyway either.
No. And even Reggie and the Pacers, you know, the Davis brothers and Smiths.
Indiana, that's the one I was going to mention next. Now you got Indiana coming to the forefront with Chicago and the Knicks. And so, listen, I understand it. Again, to me, I get it. To me, I think it when I tell them all the time, hey, to be able to do that was genius, Mike Fratello, on your part, to get this group of guys to say, okay. And again, now as the older group was starting to fade out a little bit, no, I'm not going to tell you that all of them that's what they were pleased with, but Mike was able to sell that to as we said, the Brandon Hill, Mills, Cage team, and then with Sura and getting Dan Marley. And so at least, again, they were competitive, Brad. Again, I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're going to win an NBA champ? Well, of course not. They're not going to win an NBA championship. But so to me, I'd rather have that. I mean, if I'm a fan, I got a team that at least 45, 47, 48 wins every year. And I know they did. That group, unfortunately, got beat in the first round of the playoffs in 4 straight years.
But they did make it. And that, like your point,
they did make it.
They did make it. I remember those.
That's opposed to with the different philosophy, or I guess the more I put normal NBA philosophy, that probably went 20-60. And no, that's a fact. I mean, that's that. I don't think that's arguable, quite frankly. And again, it wasn't. But a lot of people were look upon its style. It's boring. It's not it's not how you want to go to game and have fun. Well, again, I want to win.
Yeah.
Now, if you're asking me about pro sports, Brad, pro sports, I want zone it winning. Either win or everything else is completely miserable. And they're going to get people going to get fired, and changes are going to be made, and rosters are going to be torn apart. You got to win in pro sports.
Agreed.
You have to. And you can, well, that's not really winning. Well, it was winning way more than they would have had they just decided, well, we're going to run up and down and play games in the 130s every night. They wouldn't win a game that way.
No,
they didn't have the roster to do that.
And Michael, unless you get lucky with a Tim Duncan or LeBron in the draft, you're still not going to. What's going to happen? I mean, no disrespect to other guys who went number one, but there's not many number one picks who are going to completely change your franchise. Where you're going to, it's hard.
That's right.
There's not many Duncans and LeBrons. So unless you get lucky with them, you're still going to be in the same position. It's going to take 5 years for that guy to develop, and then So it's just, and you talked about the teams that Mike wanted.
And again, I'm not going to. It's very difficult right now. The situation the Cleveland Cavaliers are in.
It really is
very, very difficult. And I'll tell you, I'm not even going to try to tell you I got a crystal ball to reach into a timeline. It's going to. They got to have, and everybody, well, Sexton and Garland, yeah, that's fine. But look, here's the deal. They're the smallest backcourt in the NBA, too. I know they're both very talented offensive guys, but they're both 6'1".
Yeah.
Maybe 6'2" on a good day. And that's, that's a size disadvantage every time they play.
Yes, it is.
To me, they have to, they have to get a 3, a small forward that every night is going to get you 18 to 25 every night.
Completely agree. I couldn't agree. No, they don't. And no disrespect.
I don't know if young Mr. Okoro, I look at him more as a defensive player, quite frankly. I was very surprised they took him, was it 5th overall in the draft? Again, I'm not knocking the kid, and all the best to him, but right now I don't see him as having those kind of skills that are going to develop into a tremendously successful offensive player that can carry your team. So you get that, and I know Sexton's going to go get you 30 some night, this, that, and the other, but he's doing it for a losing team.
Yeah, agree. And Coro, I love his defensive prowess. I love the fact that he can switch on pick and rolls, guard multiple positions. But you said it. You need that guy, that 6'7", 6'8", 6'10", the LeBron, the Durant, that kind of guy. You need that guy to win. In this current NBA. You can't not. I mean, even Klay Thompson. I mean, look at Golden State. They had that backcourt. Klay 6'7". You can switch on pick and roll. He's a good defender. And then they had Iggy and they had Livingston. They have bigger guys who can. So again, I completely agree with you. You can't have a small backcourt like that. And
Well, yeah, and that's my, and I know Cavs fans, I'm sure a lot of them don't like to hear it, and I've talked to a couple of them, and oh, Reggie, you're being so, well, listen, first of all, I hope people know me enough. I've been here forever, man. if you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to answer it how I think. And it may not be what you envision. It may not be throwing rose petals and bouquets up, but, I'm sorry. Joe Tate taught me. See, sorry, I told you about Joe. That's the way it is, man. And that's how I called games too. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat stuff. Again, do I want the Cleveland team? Of course I do. It makes it more fun for all of us. But when there are things that are obvious within the scope of professional sports about, okay, they just don't have that. What would you like me to do? Would you like me to magically create it? Well, no, I'm going to tell you, they don't have it. And here's how here's how you're going to have to play since you don't have it. And there are going to be nights when you're just behind the 8 ball because you don't have it. And that's just the way it is.
No question about it. And you real quick on the teams that you said, Mike wanted to inherit, Mike Fratello back on that he thought he was going to inherit, Price and Doherty and those guys. I had Ricky Pierce in the program, and Ricky, played for the Bucks and Sonics and a great player. And Ricky said, going to Cleveland back in those days in the 80s, he goes, it was a tough place to play. Because when you played against those boys, the Price and Doherty and Nance, and they're a great team back then. Ron Harper for a while and Elo. So he even said, he was people.
There's no doubt about that. And that's how, as Ricky Pierce, that's how it was viewed around the whole NBA. I can tell you that, that's those championship Detroit Pistons teams, Dumars and Vinnie Johnson and Lambeer. They talked about that all the time, man. Cleveland is big time for real. And they are very, very difficult, to deal with. And again, that's the thing in knowing, and, unfortunately, that's the group that Mike Fratello thought he was going to have for, I'd say, a minimum of 4 years anyway, and really felt they could win a championship. And, for various reasons, mostly injury related, and it just completely disintegrated. It fell apart, and it had to go to something totally different. And as we've been kind of pulling that, Brad, in the NBA, no, you can't expect to take 3, if not 4 key components away from a group that you put together and have played together and shown how cohesive they are and how they've grown to the point of where they are a perennial champ. You take a couple pieces of that away, you got no shot. You got no shot for a while. You got to completely get that resurrected then. And that doesn't come easy.
And Michael, I want to fast forward it now so going into the early LeBron days when he first comes here, did you see how special of a we all knew how great he could be, but did you really think he would live up to that hype of being now arguably one of the top 2 or 3 players of all time?
In the first couple years, because you could see it was just so talent, he was just extremely gifted talent-wise. You could see it from that perspective, Brad, but to be quite honest, and it might have been, it's probably unfair to ask. He came in the NBA at 18 years of age and on a poor team, right? On a poor team. Probably unfair, but what I was looking at, there was no doubt in my mind that, can he, from a talent perspective, continue to grow and develop into what you're saying, whether it's, top 3, top 5, top 10, absolutely. What I was looking to see is what about between the ears from the emotional side and the mental side? Was he going to be able to shoulder this type of just absolutely ungodly responsibility to lead this team? Now, we know you can do it physically, but what kind of toll, what type of burden is it going to be for you, young LeBron James, to try to lead this franchise, your hometown, out of the wilderness? And that's where I thought, as you saw the year 2 turn into year 3 for him, Brad, and into year 4 with the Cavaliers, you saw it more and more that he understood, there's a heavy load on me night in and night out, but I'm up for the task, and I understand what it is, and I'm going to lead this basketball team and do everything I can to make it into a championship team. And I, for a kid that age, I have nothing but, absolutely ultimate major admiration in him and respect for that. Because, I don't care who is, hell, that's not easy for a 28-year-old, 10-year veteran when you have that put on you. And yet he, hey, we all remember some of the stupid stuff we did when we were 18, 19, me, you,
Yeah.
all of us. And man, boy, oh, why did I do that? Why did I think that? Why did I act that way that night? Hey, but for the most part, given everything that he, like I said, had to accept and endure. Hey, man, this is your reality. Here it is. Okay. Yeah, this team isn't very good. So you are, the chosen one, so to speak. So here it is. Well, and he found out there's more than just your physical talents alone that got to go into that. And I'd say that stuff between the ears and everything that you have to encounter there is a far heavier load than, and that's with all great respect to the greatest players in the world, talent-wise. But he found a way, and so what? 5 years in, he's got the Cavaliers in an NBA. 4 years in.
Yep, 4 years. Yeah,
4 years in, he's got the Cavaliers into the championship, NBA
it's
championship.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you could say, I mean, again, I have respect for all of them. I mean, people say, yeah, with Z was healthy and on that team, but Sasha Pavlovich and Larry Hughes and guys like that. Well, Larry Hughes was a hell of a player with the Washington Wizards, man.
He was
a hell of a player that averaged 22, 23, 24 a game for 3 years running with Antoine Jameson and
Gilbert was on that team. Yep, Arenas, I think, was on that team.
Gilbert Arenas. I was going to say Caron Butler, but who was on the team later too. But Gilbert Arenas, yeah. So, I mean, they win the championship here. But I think, to me, I'm not going to get into it now, but I'll just say this. As far as people, of course, no one here is happy. And as the whole story has unfolded, LeBron has wound up leaving here, the Cleveland Cavaliers, not once, but twice. Okay? I don't begrudge him.
Why?
I don't hold anything against him. He led this team to a championship here. And I know a lot of the reasons why that were going on that, he also decided, well, this isn't where I want to be and what I want, and, how I want to play basketball. So, I don't begrudge him anything.
Yeah,
and
Michael,
look, he led him to a championship here. Would you liked it to when he came back again after the Miami days? Sure, everybody was hoping there would be a couple of them, maybe. Even after they won the first one, 2 more opportunities against Golden State. Okay, hey, listen, it didn't happen again. Any sport, I'll say this forever, it has nothing to do with LeBron, it has nothing to do with Brad, it has nothing to do with me. You people got to take a step back and really take a look at and understand how difficult it is to win a championship in professional sports. It's hard. It's hard. Everything's got to go your way. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you think, well, the Yankees buy everything. It doesn't matter. It's still hard because they're long seasons and everything's got to go your way. And there's a lot that you got to get through that, I think most people don't have any idea. So just, when you say, whoa, LeBron should have won 3 or 4 championships here, it's, you don't know how hard that is. It's very difficult.
I mean, just to get to the finals 8 straight years like he did. And Michael, I agree. I don't begrudge him either for leaving, the times. I didn't like the way he did it the first time, but then after, I mean, everyone makes mistakes. I mean, there's not an athlete that's not going to make mistakes in their career like that. And he even kind of regretted it, but he came back, he won a championship for the city of Cleveland. I don't think there's anything else you can ask of the guy, so I'll always be a fan of his. And I think a lot of Clevelanders I talk to still, they don't really have anything against him. He brought us a championship. It was
I hope so.
Incredible.
And I hope so. But again, you're right. There people are going to feel the same way. And again, it hurts because, here, what did I say about 10 minutes ago? pro sports is about winning.
It is.
Right? I mean, you're either the late Chuck Daly, who was once a Cleveland Cavaliers head coach for about, I don't know, maybe 30 games during a year. And, of course, three-time NBA championship coach of the Detroit Pistons. You know, I remember him one time, he said, Reghi, he said, there's winning and then there's misery. And there's nothing in between. In professional sports, you either win or you're miserable.
Yep.
And if you don't win, then it's misery, it's suffering, it's loathing everything that's going on. And you know what? That's right. That's right in pro sports. So, yeah, I mean, I just know this: if you don't think LeBron James, and regardless of how you feel about him leaving once, twice, in the impact, but the Cleveland Cavaliers going back to 2005, okay, in the years without LeBron James on their roster, and that's 8 of them, they've won 30% of their games.
Wow.
30, which I believe it's either the worst or the second worst, period of time in the NBA without him on this roster. So,
kind of says it all.
Pretty much.
It really
I
does.
think so.
It really does.
So.
And
hate to have to say that, but there again, that's a fact.
It's the truth. Yeah, the truth. And
Yep.
And I have a couple more questions for you. And one of them, I want to, your Baltimore days, take us through, what is your favorite, 1 or 2 memories covering that Baltimore squad? Because you got to see Musina. I mean, they had a great squad. Yeah. Actually, the Indians beat them in '97, I think, when you first got there. But, what was that squad like? And give me like 1 or 2 favorite memories from covering the Orioles.
A tremendous tradition-rich baseball city and a baseball organization. And it was, would I have, again, I'm going to be very open with you. Well, I preferred, I could have called the Indians or the Detroit Tigers. Sure. I mean, again, I've gone through my history and, so yes, but the Orioles gave me the opportunity, and it was, I got great support from the management at both the Cavaliers and Fox Sports Ohio, that as long as I didn't miss any Cavalier game at that time, they weren't making the playoffs. Right? They did with Mike Fratello, and I missed a couple Orioles games in that 97-98 playoff year, but I didn't miss many, so they gave me a few I could miss. So yeah, it was something an opportunity to call Major League Baseball, and I'm very humbled but honored. During that period of time, there was only 2 guys, myself and a guy by the name of Drew Goodman, who did both the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Rockies, that called both, major league sports, an NBA team and a Major League Baseball team, in the same time, in the same years. And I'm talking about on the local packages. Of course, they're guys that Bob Costas or Al Michaels, but I mean, calling a team every day. So that's something I did for 8 years, where I interacted calling both the Orioles, the Cavaliers and the Orioles in the same year. And man, labor of love. I mean, I was over 250 games a year. So there was, I didn't have a lot of downtime or anything like that. But again, I loved it. That's what I wanted to hopefully have happen when I started, and so it did. So, I'm very grateful and very humbled and very honored, and to have had those kinds of runs. Cal Ripken with the Orioles for me, calling his 3,000th hit. I called a Hideo Nomo against the Orioles no-hitter.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
The Boston Red Sox. But again, Brad, more so the day-to-day of baseball, as I said earlier, for me as, growing up in Detroit, to be able to go into Yankee Stadium and Fenway Park, and at that time, with the Orioles in the same division as them, 20 games each year, against your division rivals. So, I was 3 trips and 10 games in a year in Yankee Stadium, 3 trips, 10 games in Fenway Park. Back at the time, the Toronto Blue Jays were pretty good, even though I didn't like the Sky Dome too much. I mean, the city and Toronto baseball-wise. So, that was those were the teams I saw the most: the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, and of course the Tampa Bay, the Rays too. That was all part of the AL East. But being around Cal Ripken every day, as you said, Mike Messina, Eddie Murray. Ironically, someone I'd known all these years here, and then in Mike Hargrove becomes the manager of the Orioles and comes to Baltimore. And I remember, boy, he spent hours on the phone with asking me, well, you hear things about, because again, Mike went into a situation, Brad, where you got an aging organization, with a group of stars: Rafael Palmeiro, Robbie Alomar, Brady Anderson, right? Mike Messina, Jimmy Key, Scott Erickson, Randy Myers, led by, of course, the Iron Man, Cal Ripken. And, I remember Mike even saying to me, well, do I got to play him every day? Yeah, Skip. You didn't get this from me, but I don't think that's going to be an option that you could say Cal's 0 for his last 16. I think he needs a day off. No,
I don't think that'll go over too well.
I don't think that's going to be an option for you. So, but I mean, those kind of things. I loved it. Baltimore's a great baseball city, but Cal Ripken is just an amazingly incredible athlete. And I admired greatly. I mean, and here's another man that every day, Brad, at least during, pregame or BP, hitting practice, infield practice, he'd get done with that. And I'm telling you, he would be over near the dugout and signing for an hour or more every day.
Wow.
And like, wow, man, this guy, he's like a machine. He's like a machine. But, there was nothing he loved better than to, play baseball and, try to help his team win. And if he wasn't feeling good that day, there was no such thing as taking a day off, because he always said his dad, Cal Sr., would give him all kinds of hell for that if he ever thought he wanted to. So, yeah, I mean, just an incredible part of baseball history. And I was very fortunate to have an opportunity to be a part of that.
Michael, a funny story. 2 days after he broke the streak in 95,
yes,
they came to Cleveland, actually. And that's the day the Indians clinched the playoffs for the first time in 41 years. And I was at that game. Yep. Yeah. I remember I was sitting third base side with my dad. I'll never forget that as long as I live. Because Cal just broke the record, and then we made the playoffs. So it was just a great week.
And that's what's so funny and why everything is intrigued. I just mentioned the Hargrove thing. At that time, I was calling the Cavaliers, but for, during the summer, I was the pregame, postgame host of the Indians. Mm-hmm. So, I saw all that began in 1995. And then, as you said earlier, in 97, the Orioles went wire to wire. I thought had the best team in baseball, and that tremendous series. I remember the game here on a Saturday afternoon.
12 innings.
Fantastic. Pass
one of the best.
Won it for the Indians. Mike Messina on the mound for the Orioles. And
I think Nagy pitched that game for the Indians. I think it was Charles Nagy.
I think Chuck Nagy did pitch that game. Yep. You're right. And it went 12 innings, and a pass ball by Lenny Webster, the Orioles catcher, won it in the 12th. And the baseball world thought, well, the Orioles are going to beat the Indians in this, and the Indians took them out. That was the year that Marquise Grissom was here and played center field for the Tribe. Mm-hmm. And it was
David Justice. Yep.
David Justice, Matt Williams.
That's right.
It was very different. I tell you, and here I am, a Cleveland guy, and I think they were looking at me with, but I can tell you it was a very, very difficult time. And then winter in Baltimore. Because I did too. I thought that team's going to win it all. That Orioles team is going to win it all. I mean, Messina, Jimmy Key, Scott Erickson, led their starting pitching staff. Scott Kamenicki was their fourth and won 14 games. as her number 4. But then look at the everyday lineup. I mean, Rafael Palmeiro, right, and Robbie Alomar on the right side of the infield. They had gotten Mike Bordick, and Bordick, excellent fielding shortstop, get 270. Cal played third base, and then, that B.J. Surhoff in left, Brady Anderson in center, or Eric Davis.
Yep, Eric Davis.
And, I mean, they had Chris Hoyles caught. I mean, I thought they were, and they were. They 162 games. They were the best team in baseball. But again, we mentioned this earlier too. Championships are hard to win.
Yep.
Now it doesn't matter what you did from April to September 30th. And Michael, the Indians beat them.
In that 95
innings. I mean, you asked me, well, who's the better team? Well, the Orioles are the better team. No, again, right?
They were on paper. No question about it.
Hey, Reggie, you got your choice of two teams. Orioles or Indians? I'm taking the Orioles.
No question.
I want to go play 162 games with this Orioles team. Again, no disrespect, but we look it up. I believe the Indians went 86 and 76 that year.
They did. You're exactly right. Yep, they're only 10 games above 500. Yep.
There you go.
And it reminds me of the 95 Indians. Same thing. Won all those games. I mean, we're the best lineup maybe ever. One of the best lineups ever.
No question.
And really only get
they're going to win it all, right?
Yep, they're
going to
win it all.
Sail to a World Series.
And the Braves take them out. Only Braves championship of that whole, that starting pitching staff they had, it was against us. And it's just so one of those things, like you said, in the Golden State in 2016. I mean, I don't think anybody thought we were going to beat them. We get crushed the first 2 games. It looks like it's going to be a disaster, and we end up beating them. So you're right. You just don't know. I mean, that's why sports.
You don't know. And professional sports, again, you want to say they're the best over 162 in baseball. They're the best over 82 in the NBA. Even over, of course, it's a lot different if you say 16 or now 17 in the NFL. But again, you find that isn't it funny how sometimes the game changes in October in baseball, and the things that you thought were a big time positive for you for some reason. I mean, again, that Indians offense in 1995, right? And now you face Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz. And I know what Indian fans are going to say, so I'll say it for you. And maybe some of the plate widened a couple of inches, maybe. But then again, I'll say this, aren't you happy right now when, that umpire, when that pitch you see from Shane Bieber is an inch and a half off a corner? Well, there again, man, when you are judged to be Shane Bieber, he's going to be around the plate, right? All the time. Great command. You're going to get pitches that are off the corners called strikes. Glavine, Maddox, and Smoltz had that reputation. Mm-hmm. And now if you're not Indians fans, you're going to say, well, that's the way it shouldn't be. And others will say they deserve that because they're that good. Well, whatever side of the camp you're on, I could tell you it's true. And the Atlanta Braves are the only pitching staff that got that in the history of time in Major League Baseball. No. I mean, I think good pitchers, guys that have that resume, that reputation, he's always around the plate. I'm saying, guys that throw strikes 75% of the time, they're going to get calls.
No question about it.
They're going to get calls. It's just the way the game is.
I mean, it's just like anybody, MJ, whoever going to the basket, they're going to get in his prime, he was getting the calls. I mean, it's MJ. So what are you going to do about it?
He's going to. He just is. And they're not. So does it make it more difficult then to beat those guys? Sure. You have to do it more convincingly then? Sure.
Yeah.
But again, there'll be a time when your team, whoever your team is, trust me, will benefit. There will be. You don't think so at times, but again, to me, I think I see it, and that's Shane Bieber is phenomenal, man.
He is. He's unbelievable.
Because of his command and control, he's getting calls that are an inch off corners. Mm-hmm. He is. Look at it. Trust me. Watch it and be honest. He is. And hitters are like, again, I was a hitter, so to the umpire, is this the way this is going to be all night long? Yeah, you just hit. Okay, thanks for letting me know. Now I know I got to expand my zone now.
You got to adjust. Exactly. Yep.
I got to, as a hitter, I got to expand my zone now. But you know what? You better than, son, or you know what? You can be walking back to the dugout being punched out 3 or 4 times.
That's true. No, that's very true. And
Yep.
I look back at that series, and of course, we could always make the excuses for, but it is what it is. And the Braves had, arguably, I mean, you could even count Steve Avery in there as a 4 starter.
Good.
He had one of the best staffs of all time.
All time.
And, it is what it is. And
exactly. And again, I mean, it hurts because you're an Indians fan. But again, if you're watching that World Series, that's what I mean, Brad. It's just, you're watching that World Series as a fan of the Kansas City Royals or the St. Louis Cardinals or, the Los Angeles Angels, Chicago Cubs. Doesn't matter. Oh, that's no surprise to me.
Mm-hmm.
Glavine, Smoltz, Avery shut the Indians' bats down.
Yep.
Period. That's what they're going to say.
Yep.
And I mean, looking back on it now, I mean, sure, you hope. I mean, like I said, I was doing the pre and post game for the Indians then, but damn, you knew, man, this is going to be a tough task, man. These guys are only, I mean, if those guys in their 7, 8 innings on the mound, those 3 especially, if they didn't pitch a complete game, they're going to give up 3, maybe some nights 2 or 1 run. Look, this ain't going to be easy to win.
No.
You're going to have, Hershiser and Nagy and every Indians pitcher is going to have to try to match them.
That's right? Not easy.
And I mean, that's really the only way. That Atlanta team, if you did beat them, it's probably going to have to be 3-2 or 2-1.
No question about it.
I mean, you expect they're going to give up 5, 6, or 7?
No, wasn't going to happen. Nope.
No, wasn't going to happen. So I mean, that's there you go, man. There's competition for you, right?
You're exactly right.
There's competition,
and that's why you watch. You never know what's going to happen, right. And it's fascinating to have those kind of matchups.
Right.
Michael, one more question for you. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
My pleasure, Brad.
I could ask you about 20 different questions, but so looking back at your career, and I ask this to every guest, what do you want people to know about the legacy of Michael Reghi?
That I approached every day with work ethic and character, and hopefully represented that game that day in the very best way I could. And if, I've always said this, Brad, how people, and I've learned it, sometimes you got to have a thick skin because, listen, you think for every guy that says, oh, Reghi's great, there's another guy that's saying, I can't stand him. He's awful. Now, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's a fact. As I said, now that may happen, a little bit more when you're starting and you're younger. I mean, as you said about, we were talking about Joe Tate. We never heard anybody, say around here anything but glowing things about him, of course. But, Joe, when he got into, a little bit of situation with the Cavaliers ownership and they weren't doing a real good job and Joe let him know about it. Remember, he left here and went back to what would have been his hometown team, the Chicago Bulls. Mm-hmm. He called the Chicago Bulls for a couple of years. And, I mean, here he is. He grew up on a farm, downstate from Chicago. It didn't go over as well as it did here for whatever reason. We could probably go this, but he wasn't received with the great acclaim he was here. Why? I don't know why. It's just strange to me. It's the same Joe calling the, well, he was a little bit negative on the Bulls. Hey, man, he was telling what he saw but so there, I just give you that example because it's true. And there's, so, I mean, think when Joe left here, he probably thought he's going to be doing the Bulls for the rest of his career, and it didn't work out that way. So, that's what I mean when I say that I've learned that, and again, I'm not trying to say I always do a game, with the fans in mind, but I just, I hope I'm respected. I just, believe me, as I said, I wanted the Cleveland teams to win and be successful, but I just could never be that, ultimate pom-pom waving homer. You're gonna when they're playing well, you're gonna know about it because my style is you're gonna know about it from the way I'm calling the game. And while I don't believe in ever, because I have too much respect and know how hard it is to play, at those, I never, ever would I just rip players or coaches. But am I going to be constructively critical? Absolutely. And I hope you fans, meaning trust me, that I would not be constructively critical unless it was warranted. As a reason why things weren't as successful as you fans want or want the team you root for to be. So, I just hope fans understand that I have a great passion for what I do, and I always gave you everything and then beyond of me in terms of how I prepare and my work ethic, and for calling a game. And Brad, I've always said, kind of to finalize that, I've always said, but I had a couple of guys during the course of my career that, a couple fans and a couple other guys that do what I do that, said to me, Reghi, I don't really like your style that much. However, I know that you are immaculately prepared every time you're behind the microphone. I know you know the games inside out. I know you know the teams you're calling inside out. And that's why I think you're real good. And Brad, I took that as a, and I don't take this the wrong way, but you know how it is, you're at an arena of fans. Hey, Michael Reghi, I love you, man. You're my favorite. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. What I just told you that was said to me by a couple people that said, I don't really like your style. However, I think you're a hell of a strong announcer for these reasons. That kind of sticks with me more than the other, I guess.
Well,
I
think
that makes sense to you.
It does. No, it definitely does. Because they're being 100% honest and being,
they are.
Yeah. And yeah. I can appreciate that. And I can tell you, I told my brother, my dad, you're going to be on the show, and they're ecstatic. I mean, you're one of their favorite announcers of all time. And, we grew up watching you, of course. So my dad's, you talked to you many times before, but my brother and me, when we were younger, grew up with your voice. So you are one of the voices of my youth. A lot of my friends knew about you coming on. They're all excited because, again, you're one of our childhood voices. So you don't forget the Joe Tates and the Michael Reghis and the Tom Hamiltons, and you don't forget those voices. And it's something that you always remember as a sports fan. So again, I appreciate you, Michael, and you're one of my all-time favorite broadcasters and favorite announcers, and it means a lot from you coming on the show and talking to you about your career. It's been awesome. I really
Thank you, Brad. I greatly appreciate all those kind words, and believe me, it means the world to me that someone that has been as large of a Cleveland sports fan would say that. And I guess that when you put it all together, that means a great deal. You just hope that you have brought some happiness and pleasure to sports fans' lives, because it doesn't have to be, absolutely death and all those bad things. As I said, the late Chuck Daly said to me, yeah, Reghi, you either win or you're miserable, man, and you suffer and yeah, I get it, coach. I get it. But for what I do, I just wanted to make sure that fans were enjoying their team's play and entertained. And if that's the end result and that's the bottom line, then I'll take it. I guess I did something all right.
I mean, one of the things I'll always remember in LeBron's career is flight number 23. That was the first call
Thank
of
you.
LeBron. I mean, that's the, everyone knows that call. So again, you're just what you did, Michael. It's iconic in Cleveland, and you're one of those voices that a lot of people in my generation, and really multiple generations, will always remember. And I think that's something you can definitely hang your hat on, because that's not many people can say that.
Thank you, Brad. It's been an honor to be with you, but an honor to be in Cleveland all these years with the great fans, and being able to interact, and understanding how passionate they are, all of you are, about your teams. And I get that. As I said, the good thing about my venture here in Cleveland is I grew up as a little boy and into a kid and into teenager the exact same way. So, in the same type of city as Cleveland. So I get it. I understand it. And I think honestly, that part of me helped me a lot coming to a city like this, because I've lived it. I've lived it, like I said, from the time I was 3 years old, starting, listening to and watching sports on TV and understanding what a city like Detroit, a city like Cleveland, how that's all woven around and interacts with their teams. So, I've loved it. As I said, it's been a tremendous ride, and I appreciate all of the fans and all those that have through the years. Still calling games, by the way. Still call college football and basketball for ESPN, and that's probably the way I'm going to ride into the sunset here in a few years, and that's good too, because again, anytime I get a chance to call a game for fans that love it, then I'm in a good place.
Well, Michael, you're one of the best at what you do, and it was just a great honor having you on the show.
Brad, pleasure's all mine. Thanks so much for taking the time, and always pleasurable to join you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. All right, take care.
You too, man.